So I make my own sourdough bread, right? It's 80% wholemeal and 20% rye flour, and I consider it to be pretty hefty. Yeah? You sort of thing. But one thing I also have is a recipe book, which I love. It's written, I think, in the 1930s, although it doesn't actually say. And what they did is they went round the UK and collated lots of recipes from farmers' wives. One reason why I love this recipe book is because a lot of the recipes are insane. For example, Mrs. K.W. Mollard from Cornwall very much disagreed with the idea that my bread is quite hefty. Her wholemeal bread recipe includes 2.5 pints of tepid milk, 2 ounces of lard, and 2 mashed potatoes. I am fascinated to see what this bread is like. Gonna have to leave this on the side for a bit to warm up, which is exactly what you'd want in your bread. I've just read the recipe again, because it's, of course, it's, 1930, so it's all in imperial measurements. I didn't register. When it said 2 pounds of white flour and 3 pounds of wholemeal flour, that's what? 5 pounds in total. This thing's going to be almost 2.5 kilos of flour in it. What on earth? Okay, I've decided to half everything in the recipe, which means it will only have 1.25 pints of milk. Step 1 is to rub 1 ounce of lard into 2.5 pounds of flour. 2 pounds of white, 1 ounce of lard. I might have overdone the lard. Cold mashed potato. Wonderfully, the recipe then goes, cream the yeast and the sugar and the warm milk, which is interesting because the ingredients don't mention sugar at all. Mrs. Mollard, I am unimpressed. On the bright side, seeing as I have no real way of measuring half of 1.5 ounces of yeast, I'm gonna have to wing this anyway. Warm milk. The recipe says you're supposed to cream all this together. I'm not actually good enough at cooking to know what that means, so I'm just gonna stir it loads. Just because Mrs. Mollard doesn't seem to know quite how to do this, doesn't mean I do. Then the next stage is to pour it in, cover it up, and wander off. Now, if this were sourdough, I'd make this into a dough and then I'd leave it to rise, but she explicitly says not to make it into a dough until after it's risen a bit. So I assume I just mix it together roughly here and then leave it for an hour or so. Well, okay then. Looks pretty much exactly the same. Nevertheless, I shall now endeavour to mix it into dough. Once I've got the tins ready. I'm a little apprehensive, I'm not going to lie. Okay, you missed a bit because my camera ran out of batteries, but what's happened is I've made them into a dough and I've put them in the tins now, so they're rising nicely. In another hour or two, our milk-filled, lard-laden double-carb bread will be ready for baking. Mrs. Mollard, what shape was your family? Things have gone about as well as I should have expected. I had to give a guitar lesson and they've really, they're saggy and they've overproven. Everything will be fine. I mean... What? I'm not gonna lie, Mrs. Mollard. It surprised me a little bit. Yeah. Now it sounds reasonably hollow, but it's still quite soft and moist on the bottom, so I have no idea if it's properly cooked. So let's just see. Look at that! I can't tell if it's quite gummy still. Taste test, I suppose. Yeah, it tastes like bread. What? Do like and subscribe if you enjoy this content, and sharing it to people would be great. It would be great if more people were getting a chance to see this nonsense. All sorts of ideas. You may have come to realise that I tend to have quite a lot of ideas. Thanks for watching.